All right, it's another episode of Back to the Bronze Age. I am Count Chocula. This is my show where I reminisce and read and talk about some comic books that I loved when I was a kid. Once again, the rules apply of the books that I go over. I had to have read them back in this time period, and at some point in time, during the Bronze Age of Marvel Comics, which pretty much is 1973, 1974 to 1986. That's kind of my years or whatever, my definition of the age. But I had to have either bought them or had my mom buy them. For the before the 80s, that was the case. But or I had to have read them at the time. Or maybe had my friends steal them for me, whichever seemed to be the best option at the time. So anyway, I'm only half joking about that. So this is part two. A couple of nights ago, for episode 14, I went over Captain America 246, 247, and 248. Or maybe it was 245, 246, 247. And no, I was right the first time. It was 246, 247, and 248. Something like that. I can't remember the exact numbers. There's a 9-issue run from Roger Stern and John Byrne back in 1980. And I think it went into early 81. Don't quote me on the exact months on that. But basically, it's mid to late 1980. It was right about the same time John Byrne was leaving the X-Men, and right before he was going to do his famous 5-year stint on Fantastic Four. Got to eventually get to some of those issues. Some of those are some awesome issues, but I don't want to feel like I'm always talking about John Byrne comics, even though John Byrne will be the majority of the comic books. Probably Chris Claremont and John Byrne will be the majority of the comic books that I talk about on this show. So without further ado here, let's just get right in to Captain America 253. And I might want to actually capture the window so I can show the damn comic book that I'm talking about. And that is not it. That's still not it. Give me 1 second here and we will figure this out. I thought I had this already taken care of. There we go. Technical difficulties. You'd think it was my first time. Kind of did this spur of the moment. As you can tell, this is all spur of the moment, spontaneous. I just kind of decide which comic books I'm going to go after. I don't read them ahead of time. I just kind of dive right in. And I talk about whatever experiences or any kind of knowledge I have regarding the comic book. Kind of one of my hobbies was not only consuming comic books, but kind of getting into some of what happened, some of the stuff that I read in either comic book magazines, or I've listened to other to famous comic book creators talk about on podcasts or something like that. So I just kind of try to share my own information of something, some little tidbits that I know about those certain comic books, and kind of share my experiences of when I read and consumed these comic books. So here is the cover that clearly you can see. It's signed there in a white box down there. That's John Byrne and Joseph Rubinstein. So I've seen recently some critique about this cover where they say that the colorization of this cover ruined the artwork, and I guess somebody had gone online and downloaded this and like made some color corrections and took away that flashlight flare. I happen to really like that effect on the cover. Yeah, it might take away from the artwork a little bit, but I mean, you get the gist, and it kind of adds to the scene. Cap's going in some kind of obviously tomb of blood. So Cap's entering some tomb here. really dark with a flashlight, and he can see it starting to open up there. So probably going to have to do the same thing with my next screen here. No, there it is. All right. So we'll go full screen here. By the way, I do upload an audio version of this to Spotify, and it's always on my live playlist on YouTube. It's just Count Chocula on YouTube. So, like I said, this is a really cool cover, Tomb of Blood, and these are my two favorite issues. The of this 9-issue run that I'm about ready to talk about, issue 253, 254. So let's get inside here, see what's going on. All right, should old acquaintance be forgot? All right, the rains washed down on a small British village not far from the north of London. They are not the cleansing rain. Over here, doctor, looks like the bloody slasher struck again. Blast, that's the third victim in less than a month. When will it all end? And you can see there's two, they've got a doctor and some sort of Scotland Yard agent here, or some kind of just British policeman. And there's a dead body here. A nice opening splash page here by John Byrne. So you can see Roger Stern, John Byrne, writer, co-plotters, and penciler Joe Rubenstein, inker. Jim Salicrup is the editor, and of course Jim Shooter is the big guy, the big editor-in-chief. These two issues of the three issues I went over before were the first three in the run. It's kind of John Byrne and Roger Stern, John Byrne kind of resetting the character. In interviews, past interview with Roger Stern, both he and John Byrne thought that they were going to do they thought they were going to be on this book a long time. They thought this was going to be an extended creative team run. And at the end of these two issues, I'm going to share a little story that I've read in the past, that Roger's interview from Roger Stern in, I think it was 2001 or 2002, in a comic book magazine. And he's made a couple different, online he's had a couple different, he's been interviewed that I've seen twice specifically about this run and why it was cut so short. So I'll talk about that a little bit at the end of the issues. Said, it's the slasher's work, all right. The neck was broken, throat mutilated, and I doubt there's an ounce of blood left in her. So it's a female. Poor girl, at least the end must have come quickly. Doctor, to think there's a bloody madman, I'm not sure what this COR abbreviation here, must be some kind of English thing. Whoops, I didn't mean to turn the page. All right, there we go. To think that there's a bloody madman like the slasher running around free. What manner of man kills an innocent woman and then drains off her blood like a slaughterhouse pig? Well, that's pleasant. A very sick one, constable. Come help me get the lass's body to my office. Then we'd best inform her ladyship of this. Minutes later at a nearby manor house. We're sorry about intruding in such a beastly hour, Lady Crichton. But you asked to be kept posted on this slasher business. That's quite all right, Constable. Little side note, John Byrne was born in England. I guess they moved when they were kids. Him and Chris Claremont both were born in England. But they moved to the United States when they were young. And actually, John Byrne didn't move to the United States. He moved he moved to, I believe, Alberta, Canada, and I think he currently resides in Alberta, Canada. I've yet to retire for the evening, and I dare say that I doubt I'll get any sleep this night. Something must be done before the slasher claims another victim. I still have some influence with Scotland Yard, you know. I'll bring Inspector Sweeney in on this right off. That's very good of you, ladyship. Oh, how, may I ask, is your father doing? Father is as well as could be expected, doctor. Thank you for asking. That medication you gave him seems to have eased his chest pains, though I'm afraid he's still as stubborn as ever. The fools. As you can see up there, it's a little bit of a shadowy figure there in the wheelchair. I've told him who this slasher is. They ignore me. Can't they see that the devil has returned among us? He must be stopped. But there's not a man among them who is capable. No, the only man who can stop these murders is an ocean away. So who could that be in the wheelchair? We'll find out here in a little bit. 6 time zones across the wide Atlantic lies New York City. It is a great city, a world city. But even the greatest cities have their share of human vermin. We've got a little side thing. You see the reflection of Captain America right here in the cash register. Come on, I know you got more dough than that. Hand it over. I have already emptied cash register. That is all I have. What more do you want for me, blood? Want for me, blood? He's not calling him blood, but if they do, they won't get it. He must be German or something. With a desperate suddenness, the arm robber whirls and fires both barrels of his weapon at the bold figure who dashes through the doorway. But fast as the gunman is, his actions is much too slow. It can't be. No man can dodge a shotgun blast at this range. Mister, I was dodging a lot worse than that, a lot closer than that before you were born. There is no braggadocio in the voice of the colorfully clad man. Only calm confidence as he takes out one opponent and turns to chase after the second. Once again, bear with me. I am still trying to get over fully this flu I had for about a week. It's actually about 7 days, 8 days. It's Captain America. I've heard about him most of my life, but I never actually thought he was for real. I got to get out of here. You didn't think Captain America was real? Really? This fellow has a pretty good head start. Still, I could easily catch him but before he reaches the end of the alley, but I don't have time to waste right now. This way we'll be faster. Powered by nothing more than his good right arm, Captain America's shield ricochets down the alleyway, swiftly arcing back in on the fleeing felon. Blasted thing knocked the wind out of me. But I got it now, and he don't. Yeah, you got his shield, sure. Okay, man, hold it right there. I got a piece, see? And I'm not afraid to use it. I don't doubt that a bit, son, but I'm not afraid either. I didn't need my shield to avoid your buddy's shotgun blast, and I don't need it now. If you want to shoot me, go ahead and try. But remember this, a lot of men have tried, a lot of men who failed. Unless you feel like you want to fail more than you already have, I'd advise you hand that thing over. For what seems to be an eternity, the trembling hoodlum stares up into the alert blue eyes of the costumed man. Feverishly, he weighs the odds. It should be impossible for the Avenger to keep from taking a bullet as close as he is, but this is Captain America he faces. I love this. I love this little 3-panel. And Captain America, it has been said, does the impossible. In the end, there's only one sane response. Here, take it. Dealing with the thugs. So here, I think it would be best if you took this, sir. The man won't be giving you any more trouble. Oh boy, I be betting not. That one you hit, he still is out of the cold. That was the most amazing thing I ever see. I called the police. They will be here soon. I can't do this guy's dialect here. Fine, then you won't be needing me any longer. Just keep an eye on that one, okay? For the man who saves my life, anything. God bless you, Kipton. I could have skipped over that, but one fast flip up a fire escape and Captain America is once again vaulting over the rooftops of the city. Normally, I would have waited around for the police to arrive, but this particular evening, I have a very important engagement, and I'll be late if I don't hurry. It looks like he stashed his art portfolio up on a rooftop. He's doing the old Spider-Man here. Ah, good. There's my portfolio right where I left it. Spider-Man used to do that. He'd web his clothes up on a rooftop or something. Hopefully, there won't be any new emergencies calling for Captain America's attention this evening, because I'm about time that Steve Rogers enjoyed a night on the town. A quick change of clothing, and freelance artist Steven Rogers slips back down into the city streets. Now, they've got him as actually a comic book, freelance comic book artist now, which I think is pretty cool. You know, why not have a why not have a character? Why not have a character be a comic book artist? And I remember the 1978 Captain America television show. They made a TV movie. They made a 2-hour TV movie with Reb Brown, and the villain was Christopher Lee. And I think they made two of them. They had his origin, and then I think they had a 2-hour one, and then I think they might have had an hour one as well. But he had like the plexiglass looking shield that you could see through. He put it on front of his motorcycle. It was really cool. For a 10-year-old kid, I thought it was cool. I look at it now, I'm like, Reb Brown is not a good actor, but I mean, he looks the part. He definitely looked the part of Captain America. But even in that, he drove around in a van, and even in that, they made him a freelance artist. I thought that was pretty cool. So right here, he's meeting his new squeeze, and this is Bernadette Rosenthal, kind of his new love interest. Calls her Bernie. So they're meeting up here. I guess they went to see a play, Oklahoma. Says hours later, after an evening of Rogers and Hammerstein, Steve and Bernie return to their Brooklyn Heights apartment building. So he's chilling with his main squeeze here, and it looks like he's about ready to get some. But the phone ring, I'm not going to read all that. But the phone rings here. Hello, who is this? Jarvis, butler to the world-famous super team, the Avengers. Yeah, and you really had to put that in there, Salicrup, really? I think the readers know that. And I hate the fact that they didn't make Jarvis a real person. They made him an AI in the Iron Man movies and then the Avengers movies. Yeah, I wasn't crazy about that. I would have rather had him like a real butler, but, I guess they didn't want to make it too much like having Alfred in Batman or whatever. It's like, why? Who cares? I'm just speculating, but Jarvis, sir, sorry to call so late, but a cable just arrived for you, for Captain America, rather, at Avengers Mansion, and I think it could be important. You think? Yes, sir. It's apparently some sort of code. All the cable says is, the fat's in the fire, time to wave the flag discreetly, tally-ho, and it's signed Fallsworth. I see. Thank you. Jarvis was right. It was in code, one I haven't heard since World War II. Steve, what was that all about? Bernie, something's come up. I have to go to England right now. It's personal business. And she doesn't look real happy about it. I don't know how long I'll be gone. I know we talked about going out on an outing this weekend, but that's all right, Steve. An old boyfriend of mine is due in town this week, and I'll be fine. Well, I better leave so you can pack. Have a good trip. Yeah, there you go. She's using the whole jealousy bit. If only I could have told her, explained that I'm needed overseas, but the burden, the duty of being Captain America is something I dare not share with her, not yet. The outer hall. Why did I lie to Steve like that? Imagine that. Was it just because he wouldn't confide in me his personal business? That boyfriend's story was so childish. Oh, what's the matter with me? You're just being a typical woman. I mean, don't beat yourself up, Bernie. Hours later, a sleek Concorde jetliner streaks eastward over the night-darkened Atlantic at faster than the speed of sound. I hadn't realized the airfare was so high. My ticket just about exhausted the cash reserve I'd built up in the savings account. I'd have borrowed the Avengers Quinjet, but the coded message in the cable said to come incognito. So it made more sense for Steve Rogers to use a commercial flight. That's all right. Tony Stark will give you some more money. They actually got a paycheck for being Avengers back then. I thought it was really cool. That's why Spider-Man wanted to join the Avengers, so he could get a paycheck from Stark. It's been a long time since I was in England. I still remember the first visit back in 1942 when London became the base of operations. And here you see a flashback of the invaders. Here's kind of a little panel of the three heroes that predated Marvel. You've got the android Human Torch. You've got Namor the Submariner, which is currently being depicted in Wakanda Forever. I'm not sure how. I haven't seen that movie yet. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure if they nailed it or not. Really cool, underrated character. And in the 70s, I mean, Namor was everywhere in Marvel Comics. He was in the Invaders. He had supervillain team up. He was in the Defenders for a while. He was always guest starring. He was always, in the early to mid 70s, he was always fighting the Fantastic Four. It was always tussling with the Hulk, stuff like that. The Hulk. Yeah, that's right. So, and here's a cool little here's a cool got a little montage thing going on here, along with Torch's flaming sidekick Toro and my own partner Bucky. For 4 long years, we fought the bizarre Nazi menaces of Fortress Europa. And for most of those years, we were joined by 2 daring British heroes, the mighty Union Jack and lovely young Jacqueline Falsworth, who became the fleet-footed Spitfire. And she is the daughter of Lord Falsworth, who is Union Jack. Union Jack didn't really have any superpowers or anything. He was just kind of Great Britain's Batman, kind of, And I forget how she got her powers. She got her powers from where she could run super fast. I can't remember exactly how she obtained her powers. Been a while since I've read Invaders comic book. But then you've got like a little. They show some of their villains that showed up in the pages of the Invaders. Masterman, who is the Nazi Captain America. He was the only Nazi to take the super soldier serum, a form of the super soldier serum. Kind of drove him batshit crazy, but it gave him super strength on the level. It might have exceeded Captain America's strength just a little more. The Blue Bullet, I remember that issue. The Face, Agent Axis, Asbestos Lady, Warrior Woman, and the Scarlet Scarab. So here's basically a breakdown of all the main villains of the Invaders, minus one very important villain. And in the end, our efforts helped bring around the downfall of the madman Hitler and his twisted Third Reich. Sir, could you please fasten your seatbelt? We'll be landing soon. Sir? Yeah, he's off in a daydream here. Certainly, pardon me, I guess I was daydreaming. Sometimes it all seems like a dream. Now for the hard part, getting through customs. I'd rather not have that inspector throw open my suitcase and let everyone see my shield inside. Until I know the nature of the emergency the cable had hinted at, it would be best if Captain America kept a low profile. Next, I'm in a bit of a hurry. Sure, mate, everybody is. Let's see your passport. And he shows Avengers priority clearance with the Captain America ID badge. Kind of gives it away right there, Now, do you have anything to declare? Avengers priority clearance. Right you are, sir. Everything's in order. Have a good day, sir. Next, let's keep it moving. I'm sure, oh, you're Captain America? He didn't say that. I guess he got the hint. One long cab ride later. Falsworth Manor. Falsworth is Union Jack. It hasn't changed a bit in all these years. I still recall the early strategy sessions the invaders held here. Well, this was our temporary headquarters. I wonder what sort of emergency could have arisen that the Fallsworths couldn't handle themselves. Well, whatever it is, I'll find out soon. Pardon me, ma'am, but is the Lord of the Manor about? He is, but I doubt that. Steve Rogers? Jacqueline? Good heavens, it is you. You've come back to us at last. Jackie, you little spitfire, it's been a long time. Too long. Here, let me look at you. So remember, everyone else is aged, and he hasn't aged much at all. So I think they feel a little. I mean, they've got to feel a little bad about it, insecure about it. Oh, it's like a miracle. You haven't aged a day since the war. Plus, he's got the super soldier serum coursing in his veins that, keeps him young and, maybe not young, but it definitely slows the aging process a little bit, I'd imagine. Just the result of an unplanned accident, milady. I spent a few decades on ice, literally. The science boys called it suspended animation. Yes, I know. I've read about it in the Times. Jackie, is something wrong? No, it's just that I'm a mess. Let me clean up and then we'll talk. I was younger than he was, and now I'm older, so much older. So they're sitting here talking. Anyway, after I came off soon in the mansion's solarium, after I came off the ice, my memory was a bit addled for a while. There were blank spaces in the past which I couldn't account for. When my first outing with the Avengers, I didn't even recognize the Submariner. It was just recently that my full memory returned. That's why I never wrote or called. No need to apologize, Steve. I quite understand. Things here have, of course, changed over the years. And he's referencing referencing Avengers number 4, which was the return of Captain America. But he wouldn't get his own solo book until 1968, again, where they started with, they picked up in 1968 with issue number 100. And then it would turn into Captain America and the Falcon. Just maybe like, I think Captain America 114 was the first Falcon. Don't quote me on that, but I'd probably have to Google that to see if my memory's right. But I used to have that book, but I can't remember the exact number. And then they're referencing Captain America 247 there, where they kind of explain, Roger Stern and John Byrne are explaining like the lost memories, and they were trying to shore up the continuity. My powers of Spitfire gradually faded over time, and my brother Brian, the second Union Jack, died in an auto accident in 1953. I married Lord Crichton in 56. I was widowed just 3 years later. I'm sorry. My period of mourning has passed, Steve. Besides, I do have a fine young son, Kenneth, who's away at school. I moved back here a year ago to look after father. Oh, but you haven't told me what brings you here. Why, I came in answer to your cable for help. Cable? I sent no cable. No, I sent the cable. Lord Fallsworth. I knew you'd come, Stephen. I could always count on you. So this is the original Union Jack here in the wheelchair. This is the guy that said that he knows what's going on with the slasher murderers. And he's being toted around by his butler here. Good to see you, sir. I hadn't expected, that is. Surprised to see me among the living. Ha! We Fallsworths are a hardy breed. But there is business at hand, deadly business. There's been a series of murders in the area recently. The police are calling the murderer the slasher, but I believe that he's our old wartime foe, Byrne Blood. And Byrne Blood was basically, they didn't mention him earlier when they had that little montage scene of all the classic Invaders villains, but Byrne Blood was basically the top Invaders villain. Probably, Masterman, between Masterman and Byrne Blood. Father, that's ridiculous. Byrne Blood is dead. No, he is undead, Jacqueline. A vampire as well, you should recall. And each of the so-called slashers' victims have been drained of their blood. I told you before, the constable thinks the slasher is some lunatic who perhaps thinks he's a vampire. At any rate, he's not Byrne Blood. I had Scotland Yard check, and Blood's remains are still entombed in the Tower of London since they've been since the war. That's kind of weird. I mean, they're keeping all the Nazi vampires, I guess, or maybe not just Nazi vampires, but they keep all they have a tomb of like the Tower of London where they keep I guess to prove that he's still there with the stake through the heart or something. Poppycock, blood as a master of trickery. He's fooled them somehow. I can feel it in my bones. I tried to convince the crown to permanently put an end to Baron Blood years ago, but no, they wouldn't listen. There's only one way to totally destroy a vampire: decapitation, and then the head and body must be burnt separately. Please, sir, it's time for your medicine. I understand, sir. I'll check things out for you. Oh, very well, Hoskins. Stephen, I'm an old man, but you... He says, he goes, I understand, sir. I'll check things out for you. Bless you, son. I'm sorry, Steve. I'm afraid that father has become a bit senile. Don't say that, Jackie. Don't ever say that. He may be old and enfeebled, but I saw the look in those eyes. His mind is still as sharp and clear as the days when he was Union Jack. If he thinks Baron Blood is behind these murders, then Captain America is going to investigate. I owe him that much. A short time later in the offices of the village doctor. You'll be fine, Jenny. Just keep taking that iron supplement and you'll be bright and full of energy in no time. Yes, doctor. Begging your pardon, Dr. Cromwell, but there's a gentleman here who'd like to ask you a few questions. Captain America, I say this in honor, sir. I saw you in action during the war. I did. I'm sorry I can't say I recognize you, doctor, but I have a feeling we've met before. I understand that you've inspected the bodies of the slasher victims. Yes, I double as the local coroner. This slasher is a dirty one. Murder and mutilation. Obviously the work of a sick mind. Obviously, but isn't there a possibility that it could also be the work of a vampire? What? How dare you mention superstitious claptrap in my presence? Get out of my offices. I don't care who you are. I'll not have such lunacy propounded here. But out. But the old doctor, they struck a nerve with the old doctor there. Sorry about that, Captain. I should have warned you that the doctor is sensitive to the subject of vampires. You probably noticed those scars on his face. Well, I got him a few years back when he was brand new to the village. There was a vampire scare in these parts back then. Some claim that Dracula himself was in the land. Well, sir, some of the locals thought they'd trapped a vampire in the doctor's cottage, so they torched the place. Doc Cromwell arrived to see his town go up in flames, his house go up in flames, the town go up in flames. Okay. The townsfolk hadn't known his daughter was inside. He rushed in to save her, but it was too late for the girl. He was pretty badly burned as well. He grew that beard to cover the worst of his scars. That's pretty horrible. That's a pretty grim story that they set his house on fire and his daughter ended up dying. Wonder if that's true. I can understand the doctor's reaction, but vampires do exist. My battles with Baron Blood during the war proved that to me all too well. If Dr. Cromwell won't help me, I'll just have to look elsewhere. One form or another, the castle-like structure known as the Tower of London has stood there in the banks of the Thames for some 900 years. Much history is tied in the dark passages of the tower, and it is rumored that the ghost of Anne Boleyn, second wife of King Henry VIII, often walks the tower halls. But it's no ghost who roams these corridors this afternoon. No, this is a living legend. I appreciate Scotland Yard being so cooperative, Inspector Sweeney, but you were saying that Baron Blood's body was laying in state here all these years? That's correct, sir. He was Lord Falsworth's brother, after all, and the legal question of how to dispose of a member of nobility, even if he was, well, undead, was never satisfactorily decided. Still in all, we've taken every possible precaution. Blood's tomb here is festooned with garlic, religious icons, and things abhorrent to vampires. Unlock the vault, Reg. Yes, sir, Inspector. So they've got a crucifix and garlic all around the tomb. hanging everywhere. There, Captain, blood's wire sealed and untouched all these decades. So it appears, but there's only way to be sure. Right you are. So he is the brother of Falsworth. So he is nobility. So that's the reason why they kept him around. With careful, deliberate moments, Inspector Sweeney loosens a series of clamps that hold on the heavy iron lid, and then there he is, Captain. Not a pretty sight, I'll grant you. But as you can see, there's no way Baron Blood could be the slasher. Eh? You're wrong, Inspector. Dead wrong. Good Lord, man, have you taken leave of your senses? Put that stake back or the vampire will revive. There's nothing to fear from this body, Inspector. This isn't a vampire. This isn't even the skeleton of a man. Soon in the coroner's lab in New Scotland Yard. He's right, Inspector. That's the body of a 20-year-old woman. Been dead about 12 years, I'd say. No telling how long she's been in the tower. Incredible. I knew that body didn't look right. I've seen too many in combat. This means that Baron Blood may have been loose for a decade or more. It doesn't mean that he's the slasher, but he's a very good suspect. Yeah, it looks like I owe you and Lord Falsworth an apology, Cap. I don't know how this could have happened, but I promise you we'll launch an immediate investigation. Good, you can count on me for assistance, Inspector. If you need me, I'll be staying at Falsworth Manor. And so the night falls. If Baron Blood is the slasher character, then I'm sure he'll strike before too long. Of course, Blood could have left some remote corner of the world, but I doubt that very much. He's too tied to this area. Entering the mansion, Cap finds Jacqueline Falsworth Crichton in the midst of a family disagreement. If you were going to bring your friend home for the holidays, at least you could have given me some warning. Don't hand me that, Mother. It's not lack of warning that annoys you. You just don't like me palling around with Joey. You think he's too low class. Well, if you wish me to be blunt, pardon me, I hope I'm not interrupting anything. We'll discuss this later, Kenneth. Your art school chum can stay for the time being. Do come in, Cap. I want you to meet my son, Kenneth Crichton. My pleasure, sir. Mom's always spoken very highly of you. Ken? Yeah, and I'm Joey Chapman. Ken and me are best mates at the art school, you know. Or I never thought I'd be shaking hands with Captain America. My uncle used to tell me yarns about you. You're right good shape for an old sod. Pleased to meet you, Joey. You seem to be in fairly good shape yourself. That's some grip you have. Ken and me are both on the wrestling team. Care to go a few rounds? I hope you boys can delay your match until I have a chance to speak with the captain. Well, Cap, what did you learn? Nothing for certain about the identity of the slasher, Lord Falsworth, but you were right. Baron Blood is on the loose. I knew it. He has to be the slasher. No one will be safe from my accursed demon brother until he is finally eliminated for all time. Father, please remember your heart. Cap, are you certain? Very certain, Jackie. Now, if you'll excuse us, I think we should confer with his lordship for a while in private. Not meaning to be disrespectful, Kenny, but is your grandpop all there? He don't sound like it. I don't know, Joey, but it hurts to see him like this. Shortly in the library. They all think I'm mad. I know, sir. Stephen, Baron Blood robbed me of use of my legs, and time has sapped my strength and my health. Sometimes I feel like my mind is all that's left me. Tell me honestly, am I losing that too? No, Lord Falsworth, you're as sane as any man. We can't be sure that Baron Blood is the slasher, but I agree that he probably is. These village murders may be some sort of mad warning. Whatever the case, I'm willing to stay here until we get to the bottom of this, and I promise you, we will find Baron Blood, and we will stop him. When I hear you talk like that, Cap, it takes me back to the war. Those were horrible days, to be sure, dark days, but somehow the world deemed more innocent then, more hopeful. Thank you for coming in answer to my cable, Steve. Thank you. By the time the moon is full in the skies, Falsworth Manor has grown dark, a great stony fortress amid the rolling British countryside. Uh-oh. But along one cornice of the structure skulks a twisted gargoyle-like form, a figure not of stone and mortar, but of unliving flesh and bone. This is Baron Blood. The manor has grown silent. Now shall I strike? I love the way John Byrne draws him. Creeping over the stonework of the manse, the vampire skitters down the side of the building, head first like some huge, hideous spider, until he comes to an open window. Then he pauses an awful, barely audible laugh rasping deep in his throat. Just as I thought, Captain America's been given the same guest room he used during World War II. The Fallsworths and their penchant for sentimentality have doomed the Yankee. Slowly, the grotesque figure slides into the room, inching ever closer to his intended target. One swift snap of the neck, and Captain America will no longer be a problem for anyone. Oh, I love this. I love this picture. I love this panel. Captain America is like, yeah, I was just sound asleep. Sure. So he's laying in bed with his shield, with his cowl down, but his shield and his in his outfit he's on, his uniform. I'm not going to be that easy a victim, Blood. And he smacks Byrne Blood right in the face. Your hatred for your former family always was your weak spot, Blood. Once I learned that you were free, I knew you'd have to come back here sooner or later, and I hoped that you'd be more of a challenging target than your aged brother or Jackie. I hope that you'd find me more of a challenging target than your aged brother or Jackie. Looks like I was right. Byrne Blood's only answer is a low feral snarl and a swift, sudden, devastating blow as Captain America goes flying through the plate glass window. I was careless. I have to keep reminding myself that Blood's strength is supernatural in nature, and he's much stronger than he looks. You have sealed your fate, Captain. I had planned to merely end your miserable life, but now you shall join me in undeath. I doubt that. I'm prepared for you, Blood. This loop of garlic should be enough to slow down the mightiest vampire. Curse you. Curse this dreaded herb. Herb? Sorry. Curse this dreaded herb. Its touch is as repugnant to me as its scent. You've got a lot of gall talking about repugnance, Blood. What about those slasher murderers? Those 3 innocent women? Don't you have any conscience at all? Conscience is for lesser beings. He's turned into mist. Another power Byrne Blood has. Of course, fool. Is that not within the powers of the undead? I don't care what you turn yourself into, Blood. I'll still find a way to stop you. You're a bold man, Captain, but you are only a man, whereas I am the scion of Dracula, the Lord of Vampires. Mine is the power to control the fog, the wolf, and the vermin of the earth. Even now, an army of the night is surrounding Fallsworth Manor. The longer we battle, the closer they creep towards my dear damned brother and his family. As you see some rats here, some demonic-looking rats here approaching the manor. There's a big pile of them. Indeed, at that moment in another wing of the manor. Mother, what on earth is that bloody racket? I don't know, but it seems to be coming from the direction of your grandfather's room. Between Jacqueline and the awful noise, a more silent struggle rages between these old foes. You cannot long resist the full strength of the vampire. He's right, yet for all of Blood's power, he can still be taken by surprise. And with my knowledge of leverage, I can use his strength against him. With a split-second timing that defies belief, Cap suddenly shifts his weight, propelling Byrne Blood over him and into the next room. What? Byrne Blood here? This is a cool panel here, showing Byrne Blood doing this little hypnotizing power. Leaping to his feet, Byrne Blood ignores the feeble gasp of his mortal brother, turning instead towards Captain America, his eyes ablaze in the semi-darkness. I tire of this battle, Captain. There's no need for me to waste my time in useless combat when my hypnotic powers can halt you in your tracks. Uh-oh. Badass big splash page here from John Byrne. Yes, this is much better. You shall just stand there enthralled and helpless, and then you shall die. And 3 days hence you shall arise to your eternal damnation as a vampire. Now, I don't think they've done Vampire Cap, but they have done Werewolf Cap in the late 80s, early 90s. I think right around that time, they had a run of Captain America was a werewolf for a while. Next issue, The Fateful Conclusion, Blood on the Moors. As you can see, Byrne blood here, about ready to take a big bite out of the jugular vein of hypnotized Captain America. Really cool panel. I'd love to have that original artwork. I've heard that there's a big market for original comic book art, of course. It's like a big growing, kind of a growing industry, collector's industry. And I've heard some of the experts speak that these pages are super rare. And there's just not a whole lot of them. And a lot of people would love to get their hands on some of this original artwork, but it's kind of a little bit of a mystery, like who has them, or maybe John Byrne still has them. Who knows? So that was issue 253. So let's go on to the conclusion here. Let me bring up the next issue. To battle Byrne blood. As you can see, he's grabbing Captain America here, who's struggling. More John Byrne, Rubenstein, Joseph Rubenstein. Captain America 254. A cool cover here of Byrne blood grabbing Captain America by the neck, and you've got like a feeble Lord Falsworth in the back in his Union Jack, donning his Union Jack duds and getting out of the wheelchair. Like he'd be much of a match or anything for Byrne blood. Cool cover, though. Here we go. Here is the continuation. Blood on the Moors. Captain America stands stock, still entranced by the irresistible, mesmerizing power of Byrne blood, who crawls over his victim, ready to sink fangs into the hero and then turn the living legend into an undead monster. At the door, the door of the chamber, Lady Jacqueline Falsworth Crichton and her son Kenneth stand transfixed by the horrifying tableau. While old, enfeebled Lord Falsworth, who once was known as the British hero known as Union Jack, struggles to sit up in his bed, unable to save his old friend. Byrne blood eagerly closes in on Cap's throat, his fetid breath assaulting the hero's nostrils as Cap desperately tries to break free of the vampire's control. A million questions race through the Avenger's mind. How did he come to this predicament? What is he doing here in England? So we have a recap here of last issue. They always have to have a recap, just in case, you're picking up this issue for your first one, and they're trying to entice you to go buy the back issue, the previous issue. So it shows him attacking Cap in bed. Cap gets the jump on him, and then he underestimates Byrne blood and gets hypnotized. And there are the fangs, and now the vampire's fangs are but inches away from Captain America's jugular vein. Nothing can save him now as Byrne blood bites down on his neck. Nothing, that is, except a thin layer of chainmail which covers his neck. Duh. Pain clearing my head. Thank heaven for small favors. I guess he didn't know Captain America's costume is chainmail. It's light chainmail, but it still is chainmail. Blast Jr., a cursed protective uniform. If I can't bite your neck, at least I can still break it. So that's our one thing, Baron. Results are something else. Cap, watch out. No need to worry, Ken. It doesn't matter how powerful an opponent is. Even the mightiest beings can be defeated with the proper application of leverage, which he said last issue. You will not make mock of me with your acrobatic tricks, Captain. Sooner or later, I'll get you. It's just a matter of time. You can think again, you bloody monster. You'll not harm anyone in this household. No, Ken, let me handle Baron Blood. You have no idea how deadly he can be. I guess Jacqueline Falsworth's son grabs a lamp, and he's about ready to bash Baron Blood. I can be pretty dangerous myself, Cap. As Baron Blood dodges his feeble attempt. Insolent whelp, you cannot hope to strike one who has the speed of a vampire true. Bah, you are barely worth of my attention. And yet the blood of the Falsworths flows in your veins, and all Falsworth's blood must be spilled before I am through. Kenneth, no. Let the boy go, Blood. It's me that you really want, and you know it. That's Lord Falsworth in the background from the bed saying that. But of course, dear brother, still, all that oppose Baron Blood must die eventually, and I have sworn that those deaths shall come at my hands. Easy, Ken, go limp. I'll catch you. I'm putting myself in a vulnerable position here, and Blood knows it, but Jackie's son isn't going to be injured if I can help it. Besides, in just a few moments, Baron Blood is the one who's going to be in the vulnerable position. No, not now, not so soon. The accursed sun is rising. That burning ore's rays are anathema to me. Anathema? I'm probably not pronouncing that right. To such as me. I can resist the sun's rays for a time in this form, but my powers are greatly weakened. I must flee while there is still time. Cap, you must stop him. He mustn't escape. Don't worry, Lord Falsworth. He's not getting away that easily. There are at least 3 murders you have to answer for, Baron, not to mention your war crimes. I'll answer for nothing, Yankee fool. Gathering all his strength, Cap makes a great leap after the fleeing vampire, but the creature he grabs for no longer possesses the size or form of a man. With a flapping of leather and wings, the bat eludes Cap's grasp. So Baron Blood transformed into a bat, just like that. And the Star-Spangled Avenger plummets from the upper story window. With a skill that would astound a champion gymnast, Cap suddenly twists around in midair, snagging hold of an outstretched tree limb, swinging himself around and landing safely on the ground. Yet even as he lands, his thoughts are not of himself or his narrow escape, but of his foe's surprising getaway. Incredible. Baron Blood has the full powers of a vampire. I assume that the treatments the Nazi surgeons gave him during the war to help him resist sunlight had canceled out any shape-changing abilities. See Invaders number 9. So to give up some of his natural-born vampire powers, he made a concession, and the Nazi surgeons allowed him to resist sunlight. So it appears that I was wrong. Well, that's one mistake I won't make again. Our next encounter will be your last, Baron, one way or another. I might have to reread Invaders 9, refresh my memory on that. I know I've read it. I think I've read every Invaders. Invaders lasted for, I think, about 4 years. From like 70, I think it was 75 to 79 or something like that. Cap, are you all right? What happened to Baron Blood? Problem with the Invaders is I didn't like the artwork. The stories were cool, but I just wasn't a fan of the artwork. I've never been a fan of Frank Robbins. And it's kind of ironic because the last page, there's there's a tribute to Frank Robbins. So, Cap, are you all right? What happened to Baron Blood? I'm fine, Ken, just annoyed. As for the Baron, he's flown out of sight, though probably not very far if I know him. Blood is a clever beast. I'm sure your mother's told you how he infiltrated Falsworth Manor during the war. What's all the bleeding racket about? I wake up to hear people running down the halls yelling like buskers. I look down in the front courtyard and I see hundreds of rats scurrying away. What's going on? Those rats were summoned by Baron Blood, Chapman. You've heard of Baron Blood, haven't you? He was a special Nazi agent during the war. But he happens to be a vampire, and after he disappeared, you showed up. Just where have you been anyway? So we've got the little murder mystery. Who is Baron Blood? Has he taken a new identity? What, you're accusing me of being a bleeding Nazi vampire? You're as daft as old Lord Falsworth. But daft or not, he's going to go pointing fingers. You better be ready for a fight. Yeah, like he's going to have a chance against Captain America. I grew up in the streets myself, Joey, but I learned to fight from experts, and I've had years of combat experience. That puts me several steps ahead of any young art school tough with a nasty temper. I doubt very much that you're bearing blood. You fold a little too easily, but vampires have been known to use mortal pawns. Ow, watch it, Yank. You'll break my arm. I don't know anything about any vampires, honestly. Let him go, Cap. He's telling the truth. I've known Jody for years, and I can vouch for him. He's just a sound sleeper. That's why he didn't show up until later. So Captain America is now suspicious of everyone. And we're going to see a little bit of origin story of Byrne blood here. All right, Joey. I'll accept Ken's word. You're up on the up and up, but watch your step. Come on, Jackie. We're calling on Scotland Yard. Profanity, American. War hero or not, I'm starting to get a little bloody tired of this righteous Captain America, Kenny. You wouldn't be so down on the man if you'd seen what he went through this morning, Joey. Byrne blood may sound like a bad fairy tale, but he's all too real, and God help us, he's my great uncle. You see, just before the First World War, my great-grandfather died and mother's father, as eldest son, became the new Lord Falsworth. Grandfather's younger brother inherited but a small allotment and a great deal of bitterness. At any rate, the brother set out to better his fortunes on the continent, eventually arriving in the remote section of Romania known as Transylvania. There in a crypt deep beneath an ancient castle, he found the resting place of the one he sought, the fabled lord of vampires, Dracula. Why would you go hunting for Dracula? In his mad ambition, he sought to attain power through the control of the vampire lord. Hey, Thug Hater, how you doing? Hi, Count. Really? I'm trying to keep reading here, but I'm so congested. I'm still congested, and riding my bike to and from work tonight, even though it wasn't that cold, but the wind was kind of chilly coming home. It wasn't that bad going there. It was 50 degrees, but coming home, it was probably like 40, it's about 47, 46 degrees, but the wind was it's only 2 miles. It's not that bad, but I can drive my car, but I hate to drive it with a low tire. And I hear you got your voice back. I'm still like all stuffed up. You know what I mean? Yeah, like it hurts. It like gives me a headache to read. Plus I just got done work and my eyes are tired. But I'll get through it because I really, really like these 2 comic books. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. So he opens up the crypt here, but he has not reckoned with Dracula's incredible hypnotic powers. Overcome by his vampire stare, he dropped his protective cross and became yet another undead minion of Dracula. At his command, my great uncle returned to England to wreak havoc on the homeland of Dracula's longtime enemies, the Harker family. Which you could read if you did. You would learn about if you would read the old Tomb of Dracula's. Those are awesome too. Gene Colan is the artist on a lot of those original Tomb of Draculas from the early and mid 70s. I might be going over a couple of those. Because there's one in particular, there's one issue or 2 in particular that has the first appearance of Blade. Blade premiered in the Tomb of Dracula comic book. So I'll probably, and I did end up getting those. I didn't always read Tomb of Dracula, but one of my friends that lived across the street from me, his older brother was really into Werewolf by Night. He was into all the Marvel horror. So we got to read his. Like, we'd sneak in his room. My buddy's name was Ken, and his older brother's name was Steve. And they lived across the street in like catty corner from me, like 2 houses down across the street. And his older brother wasn't really into the superhero comics that much, but he was into like Conan. So I got to read. We'd sneak in his room and read all his stuff, when he wasn't home. So he was like, I think he was about 3 years older than me at the time. And this was probably this was between 1979 and like 1982. We were friends. Then he ended up moving to Louisiana. Like, I think like freshman year of high school, I think he ended up moving. His family moved to Louisiana from Indiana. So I guess his dad got better job down there or something. So anyway, this is the origin of Byrne Blood, talking about Hitler's Third Reich. Yeah, I'll probably end up going over those couple issues. Tomb of Dracula, where it has the first appearance of Blade. It's nothing like the Blade you see. Very little like the Wesley Snipes Blade. And as you can see, they're doing a little recap montage here of Byrne Blood's first run-in with the invaders from World War II. Says, if not for the timely intervention of the wartime super team, the invaders, Byrne Blood was defeated in that battle, but a terrible price. Grandfather's legs were crushed, leaving him a cripple for life. That would be Union Jack. And his mother's life was saved only by an emergency transfusion of blood from the android known as Human Torch. He's not a full android. He's like the Vision. He's a synthezoid. So he still has blood, because he's more like a cyborg type synthezoid. So the blood transfusion ended up giving her powers, Jacqueline Falsworth, her powers into Spitfire. Still, and all out of the tragic battle was born a new super being for the strange artificial blood of the Torch, transform Mother into the super fast Spitfire. So this right here is not the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four. This is the World War II Human Torch android body that eventually became the Vision. It was resurrected by resurrected by Ultron and turned into, he was Ultron's instrument to destroy the Avengers using this guy's, the chassis, so to speak. Mother's speed faded with the passage of time, of course, and my Uncle Brian succeeded grandfather as the second Union Jack. In fact, Brian was still semi-active as Union Jack up until his death in 1953. I think grandfather would have liked for me to have become a third Union Jack, but my heart isn't into that sort of thing. I just don't see myself as the conquering hero type. Lord Kenny, I knew your family had done a lot during the war, but I never dreamt that you were connected with the invaders. I guess the captain was right to read me out like he did, all things considered. Meanwhile, a few miles away in the outskirts of the nearby village, a dark form hurriedly approaches the open cottage window and passes through, assuming once more the form of a man. Blast, I'd hoped that the passage of time had dulled the Yank's battle savvy. But if anything, he's become more formidable than ever. I shall have to rethink my plans for revenge. That shall have to wait, however. For now, it is important that I resume my protective disguise to better resist the power of the sun. So he puts on, you see him putting on a latex, he's got like a fat belly suit here and everything, but you can't really tell who it is. I know who it is, but with practice movements, the undead creature slips on a specifically constructed life mask and the padded undergarments, and gradually he assumes a more benevolent man. So that moments later, when he answers a timid knock at his door, he has become a very different man. Hello, Dr. Cromwell. So that kind of sheds the light on the mystery right there. That's the reveal. The doctor from last issue that got mad at Captain America for even mentioning the subject of vampires is the vampire. I'm still having the terrible dreams at night, and I feel so tired. Why, it's no bother at all, Jenny. And this is the patient that he was seeing when Captain America came calling to visit him to ask about the murders. And if you'll recall, she was being given iron supplements to boost her blood. So he knew he had this planned. After all, it's the lot of the doctor to help the troubled. Come right in. You're just in time for breakfast. Yeah, and she's the main course. Hours later, the main hall of Falsworth Manor becomes a beehive of activity as representatives of Scotland Yard assemble to map out strategy. Right. Now we must assume that the vampire is holed up somewhere in this immediate vicinity. I agree, Inspector Sweeney. As you know, Baron Blood is at his weakest by day, and since he now seems to have full vampiric powers, he may even be forced to spend his days in a coffin. That's just a theory, of course. However, a search of the surrounding area is definitely in order. It's urgent that we find Blood before nightfall. I want to help in the search, Cap. I know the area, and well, I've never thought I'd say this, but destroying Baron Blood is kind of a family duty. If Kenny wants in on this, then so do I, if you'll have me, Captain. All right, we can use all the manpower we can muster for this. They're practically forgotten I'm here. Baron Blood is my brother and my enemy, but time has stolen this battle from me. If only I could stand. If only Union Jack could live again. And so while Lord Falsworth sits helplessly the search begins for a man long undead. A crew of specially trained law officers scour the caves at the edge of the Falsworth estate. Even as Cap and the inspector question the townspeople of the nearby village, and you're sure you've never heard nor seen anything unusual of late. Sorry, we can't help ye. Mr. Sweeney, aside from the strange murders, everything's been quiet as death itself. No stone is left unturned. Every cemetery is checked for signs of recent disinterment. Every vicar is consulted and warned of the vampire's suspected presence. A house-to-house search is instituted, but everywhere the results are the same. Baron Blood is nowhere to be found. Because he's the doctor. Sorry. There we go. By late afternoon, two young volunteers, frustrated by the fruitless search, retire to their favorite pub to mull things over. So you boys haven't turned up a thing. I'd think you'd be grateful. I know I'd be scared to death if I were to come across a real vampire. I did come across him, Jenny, just last night. He's a ghastly enough sight to be sure, but even a vampire can be defeated, right, Joey? If you say so, Jenny. If you say so, Kenny. Me, I'm still getting used to the idea that such a creature could exist. I say, Jenny, have you been unwell? You seem so pale and jittery. Oh, it's just a touch of anemia, Kenneth. Dr. Cromwell's been treating me, but I can't seem to shake it. Well, listen then. If you aren't better soon, I'll see about getting you to a specialist in London. I can't have the woman I'm going to marry be ill. So that turns out to be, that's his fiance. Go on with you now, Kenny. You know that your mother would never stand for you marrying a commoner. I'm just, Jenny, catch her quick, Kenny. Put her on the cot there in the back room, lads. I'll go get the smelling salts. Praise the Lord, she's coming around, but her breathing's so shallow. I'm taking this blasted choker off of her. Kenny, look, her neck. And you can see there's two vampire bites on her neck. Baron Blood's calling card. So here we see going back to Brooklyn Heights in New York. His new kind of girlfriend is cleaning up his apartment for him here, And she's starting to nose around as the phone rings. Hello, Steve Rogers residence. No, I'm sorry, he's not here right now. No, he's in England. No, he didn't say where he could be reached. I was hoping that he'd, what? No, I'm just a friend. Well then, when your friend Steve gets back, you can tell him that Carmine called, Carmine from the plumber ad agency, and I had a job for him. Emphasize the had. After all, he's not that good an artist. Oh, Anna, that was Steve's art director calling. I'm afraid you just lost a big assignment. Oh, dear, don't fret. Steven can straighten everything out when he returns. And remember, he is a freelance artist. I'm sure there'll be plenty of other assignments for a man so bright and resourceful. More than enough to support a wife and maybe a family. I wonder if a June wedding would be too soon. So she's looking to marry old Byrne off to old Captain America. I don't see Cap getting married. Plus, it turns out he's still kind of hung up on Sharon Carter. But nearly a whole day of searching, and we found nothing. I have to call Scotland Yard for the manpower. At that very moment, across the wide Atlantic, Cap returns to Falsworth Manor on the run. I want the entire manor surrounded by an armed guard tonight. Otherwise, Baron Blood is sure to get at the Falsworths. I wonder if Ken and Joey have turned up anything. They haven't checked in yet. Your search has been in vain, hasn't it, Steve? I'm not surprised. My brother was devious even before he died. Lord Falsworth, sir, pardon me, but what the devil do you think you're doing? Isn't it obvious? Union Jack has been Baron Blood's arch foe since the First World War. I intend to become Union Jack once again, if only for one night. I'm sure my brother will be unable to resist such a tempting target. I know I stand little chance of overcoming him, but at least I'll draw him out of hiding. I leave it to you to end my misery should he succeed in making a vampire out of me. So in the wheelchair, old Lord Falsworth is donning the Union Jack uniform one more time. Sir, this is totally unnecessary. I assure that we can protect whom? Protect me from my brother while others needlessly die? No, I'm an old man who's outlived his usefulness, but I can still be of some help as bait, and neither you nor anyone else shall deny me that role. I haven't heard that kind of power in Father's voice since Brian died. I'd almost forgotten the man he once was. Perhaps he's right. Now, what am I thinking? He can no more be Union Jack than I could be Spitfire again. Too many years have passed for both of us. Plus, you've lost your powers, as she's got her old Spitfire costume hanging on the wall. Father, have you taken total leave of your senses? The very idea of you masquerading as Union Jack is ludicrous. I know, Jackie. Don't interrupt me, Steve. He needs to hear this. Father, you simply must start acting your age. The war is over, long over. But here you are still trying to fight it. For you to face Baron Blood would be suicidal, and I won't stand for it. Now you listen to me, Jacqueline. That bloody vampire is a Falsworth, and the Falsworths have always been have taken responsibility for their black sheep. Even Kenneth understands that. I'll see Baron Blood vanquished if it's the last thing I do, and it looks like he's having a heart attack here. Lord Falsworth, Father, my heart. Once again, the manor comes alive with frantic activity, and when the family doctor is finally summoned to the aged hero's bedchambers, I'm sorry about the mass, Dr. Cromwell, but his lordship insisted. Given the events of the past few days, that's quite understandable. At least the cloth is porous enough that it shouldn't interfere with his breathing. I'm glad you at least gave him medication. He seems to be resting well enough. I think he's waking now. Why don't you and Lady Crichton wait outside? This examination could take a while. Of course, Doctor. Come on, Jackie. And now we have some privacy. Let us get on with our examination, dear brother, as the Dr. Cromwell, a.k.a. Baron Blood, slams the door and rips off his disguise. Yes, you waking fool. Your devoted doctor of these past few years has been Baron Blood. Oh, now I've longed for this moment when you would be totally at my mercy. I've been tempted so many times in the past months, but the waiting, the prolonging of your wretched, pitiful life has been worth it. But you were defeated, your remains locked away in the Tower of London. How? How was I resurrected? That was a bit of luck. In recent years, Dracula was again in the land, brother. One of his mortal pawns I learned of my existence and pulled the stake from my heart, restoring me. That pawn was the real Dr. Cromwell. He soon became my pawn as well. I used him to gain certain information and knowledge, and when his usefulness was over, I ended his life and that of his daughter, taking his place as the kindly country doctor. As Dr. Cromwell, it was simple to sustain myself with a few anemic patients, though I must admit to weakening to my baser compulsions of late and committing the so-called slasher murders, but I was careful to kill my victims before draining their blood. I shall not be so careful with you, dear brother. So if he kills them before he drains their blood, they don't become undead vampires. Okay. I shall slowly drain your blood, and you shall join the ranks of the undead, remaining old and feeble throughout eternity. I don't think so, chum. Not so long as the dirk of good British sterling silver is by my side. No, it's not possible. You're old, feeble. Wrong again, Baron. I'm more than strong enough to handle the likes of you. Till the sun goes down, your strength isn't half. Until the sun goes down, your strength isn't half so supernatural now, is it? As he kicks him there out of bed. Now I see a third man has dared assume the role of Union Jack. Cretinous fool. I am still mighty enough to destroy you as easily as I shall drain the life from the original. He's lifting that wardrobe as though it's nothing. The last possible instant, Union Jack ducks beneath the hurtling oaken cabinet. You'll have to be a lot more on target than that to stop me, Baron. And I'll have to learn to shoot better too. Blast. I'm not used to the kick from this old Webley. But then, as Captain America comes smashing through the door, UJ, Union Jack, I heard your shot. Did you get him? I can answer that question, Captain. He did not, nor shall he get a second chance to fire his silver jacketed bullets. I don't know how you managed to see through my deception, but I shall find out. I shall find out easily enough once you're again in my power. Tell it to the chaplain, Baron. Crikey, what a kick. You made a serious mistake in your work as Dr. Cromwell. You were feeding off the blood of a young lady whose kin Crichton was quite fond of. She should live now, no thanks to you. Anyway, the boys were able to get word back to me just after we put through the emergency call to the doctor, which gave us just enough time to set you up with Union Jack the Third. Prepared or not, you'll never defeat me. Would you be willing to put that on a wager, Baron? UJ, look out. He's turning back to you. You ally yourself with amateurs, you Yankee fool. I have more than enough power to evade this stripling. No, Roger Stern's use of words. I need not even assume the form of a bat to get away from your insipid trap. But know you this. Baron Blood shall return, and when I do, there shall be no mercy shown, none. All shall die from my vampiric bite. Yes, when I return, Falsworth Manor will echo with the cries of the newly undead. But faster by far than gliding Baron Blood is the whizzing shield of Captain America. Like a thing alive, it rockets across the great hall, ricocheting back at just the angle Cap calculated to drive the undead monster from the air, before bouncing to its owner's grasp. That accursed shield again. When I'm through with you, you'll never throw it or anything else again. I doubt that. Let me put the lie to him, Cap. This blade should work just as well through a wooden stake through the heart. As a wooden stake through the heart. This is a great panel here. Baron Blood's only response is a bestial snarl and a springing bound, which once again takes the youthful Union Jack by surprise. Blazes, I was afraid of this. Union Jack is too inexperienced at this sort of thing. I have to distract the vampire, or Jack's a dead man. Byrne, over here. With one powerful yank, Cap rips loose the heavy curtains, letting the late afternoon sun flood into the chamber. No, not again. You'll not be saved by the sun again. Like a bat out of the very depths of Hades, Byrne Blood launches himself at his star-spangled tormentor. You have made a most grievous error. This is not the light of a rising sun, but that of a setting one. Soon it shall be twilight, and until then I can endure the pain. In that case, I'll just have to stop you before sunset, Byrne, and believe me, I will. I must. I've pledged myself to the preservation of life and liberty, whereas you represent nothing but death and decay, and that makes you my enemy, mister. Yes, we are enemies, and you are a fool. In the end, death wins. Death always wins. Got to get up and help Cap, but I'm so groggy. Blood near throttled the life out of me. Cap struggles valiantly, but as you can feel Byrne Blood's strength slowly growing as the sun sinks in the west, as he's tearing Captain America's chainmail off. But he knows it's only a matter of time before the monster wins. It is then that he recalls Lord Falsworth's words. There's only one way to totally destroy a vampire. And in that moment, he knows what he must do. I like these panels here. Captain America's anguish is growing. No, oh no. The deed is horrible to comprehend, but he knows that he has no other recourse. You see a silhouette of Captain America, shield coming down, and this new Union Jack is like bloody. And then the champion can only look on as the human facade of Byrne Blood melts away and the monster is revealed for what he truly was. It is a victory, to be sure, but it's not a clean victory. Joey, is it? It's all over, Kenny. Thank heaven above it's over. I'm just glad I was able to convince Cap to let me play Union Jack. You'd never have survived his attack. You always were the stronger of us too, Joe. Yeah, right. Mother, I don't know if you should see this. I saw the Warsaw Ghetto and the Nazi death camps, Kenneth. I'll hold up. But Cap, the man's all right. He just had to do his job, and it wasn't a pleasant one. Leave him alone for a moment, okay? Yeah, I mean, even though, Byrne Blood is one of the family, one of the Falsworths, hours later on the moors, the last remains of the undead beast, which has been Byrne Blood, were consigned to the flames, and the menace of the Nazi vampire is ended for all times. You can see two fires in the background there, that they're burning his head and his body separately. It's done, Grandfather. Byrne Blood will never threaten anyone again. Did you hear, Father? Kenneth said, I'm afraid he can't hear you, Jackie. What? Oh, Cap, he's gone. It must have been his heart. It finally gave out. He was a good man, Jackie, the best, and he knows to his reward. And he went to his reward knowing that his brother's evil had been overcome at last. Once again, there was a mighty empire whose lands reached around the globe and upon which the sun never set. Strong it was and powerful, and never did it meet defeat at the hands of any other nation. Time passed, and bit by bit, the empire was whittled away until it was but a fraction of its former size. Today, the empire is all but gone, and some say that the glory and the grandeur of the mighty realm that England is gone forever. But the people of that fabled land live on, and they are still a good people, a great people, a people possessed with all the strength, might, and indomitable will forged that empire of days gone by. And as long as that people endures, as long as a few of those valiant hearts and minds and souls persist, then shall the spirit of Union Jack live on. A cool little honoring the character of Union Jack. And we see here the dedicated to Frank Robbins, creative artist and storytelling wizard, and the man who first drew Union Jack. Yes, in the pages of the Invaders. But what's weird is Frank Robbins. Frank Robbins did do the Invaders comic book, but he also did a run in the mid '70s on Captain America before Jack Kirby came back and did like a short run. But what's weird is this is only about 6 years after Frank Robbins had drawn Captain America, and the fans were not. He did not get a good reception from the fans. Now, I understand that they're dedicating this Frank Robbins and the character of Union Jack. He's the very first. He's the very first artist who drew the character of Union Jack and the Invaders. But it says next issue, we proudly celebrate Cap's 40th anniversary with the legend of Captain America. Oddly enough, that would be John Byrne and Roger Stern's last issue of Captain America. It ran from issue 246 to 255, and it fell on Cap's 40th anniversary. Says the legend of Captain America. And what they do in that next issue is they have like a retelling. They kind of just retell the origin and all the experiences that Captain America had World War II, where Bucky dies or supposedly dies and all that retcon stuff. But what had happened was Roger Stern really had been on Captain America for a long time as the editor. He'd been on as the editor of Captain America a few years before he resigned as editor and took back over. He wanted to do the writing because he felt like the stories he was getting were subpar. The deadlines weren't being met, and they couldn't keep a consistent creative team. But the call went out, and Roger Stern took over the writing, and John Byrne said he gladly accepted the role of artist on Captain America. And the two had intentions of having a long-lasting run on the book. Both of them have said that they really enjoyed kind of rediscovering the character. What had happened was, in an interview with Roger Stern, when they took over the book, the deadlines, they were way behind deadlines. And as a reader of Captain America in the late 70s, mid to late 70s, I can attest that there were many times that I would be looking forward to reading the next issue off the spinner rack of Captain America, and it would be the dreaded fill-in issue. Like the story had absolutely nothing to do with the previous little story arc. And then you'd have to wait another month. And that's just poison to the sales of a book. And Roger Stern was quoted as saying, if there's a fill-in issue, it can take up to 3 or 4 months of continuation to get those readers back. They had seen it by the sales figures that anytime there's a fill-in issue by another creative team, just for 1 month, because they're ensuring that deadlines, they have to have a book every month, and sometimes creative teams don't come through. But Roger Stern, and what had happened was, Marvel had implemented, Jim Shooter, editor-in-chief, his main priority was to make deadlines, and they implemented a bonus called a continuity bonus. And if a creative team had a consecutive run of meeting deadlines on a book, they would get bonus pay. They would get the vouchers would be filled out, and they would make a bonus, financial bonus. So, it behooved them to make deadlines and to really stay with a book. And to produce. Well, Roger Stern said he had story ideas already made for the continuation of Captain America. And John Byrne was a master making deadlines. John Byrne, not only being an awesome artist, visual storyteller supreme at the time for comic books, he was also very fast. He was a fast and diligent worker. Like he could crank out 2 titles in a month, and a lot of the artists couldn't do that. But what had happened was, according to Roger Stern, Jim Salicrup, the editor on the book, had told him that they were going to schedule a fill-in issue because Roger Stern had a stomach ailment. Roger Stern had come down with some sort of stomach ailment, and John Byrne was getting married. And I guess, that's going to take a little time. But they said that not to worry. They told Jim Salicrup, tell Jim Shooter we deserve the chance to be put under that deadline pressure and to make the deadline. And I guess Salicrup had told him that Jim Shooter said no, they didn't want to chance it, and they had already scheduled a fill-in. And that did not set well with Roger Stern, and that did not set well with John Byrne. So they had already given Jim Shooter the information that they already had a 3-part storyline involving the Red Skull, a villain that we hadn't seen in the pages of Captain America in a little while. In the 60s and the early 70s, you saw Red Skull all the time. He's Captain America's main enemy, but he wasn't being used that much in the late 70s. There wasn't a lot of they had a little bit of a run like in 1974, 1975, and Frank Robbins actually was the artist on that, where they had a little ongoing storyline with like the Serpent Society and the Viper and the Serpent Crown. And then they had a short little it was like a 3 or 4 issue storyline with the Red Skull returns, and but we hadn't seen Red Skull in a little while in the book, in the pages of Captain America. Some of the stories had been kind of random, and they'd been kind of throwing in some goofy villains. And that's one reason why Roger Stern took over the writing duties. He resigned as the editor because he just wasn't happy with the quality of the writing coming in on the book. So basically, in protest, Roger Stern got with John Byrne, and they both decided they tore up their vouchers for the next few issues, and so we're stepping down off the book. And Jim Salicrup has said this came down from Jim Shooter. Now, Jim Shooter's denied this. Jim Shooter has said that is not what happened. So I have to really believe Salicrup, Jim Salicrup's take on it, because that sounds like Jim Shooter. Plus, they might have been trying to screw him out of their continuity bonus. I think it was, I think it was if you did 7 consecutive issues, you got a bonus. The creative team received a bonus. So that John Byrne isn't one to have editorial meddling in his books. If history shows anything, that was one of the reasons why he left the X-Men. He had some creative differences with Chris Claremont, but the whole handling of the Dark Phoenix and Jean Grey must die. He butted heads with Jim Shooter over that, and he felt like that just wasn't the proper direction for the book, and so he left the book. So he's not one to kind of tolerate too much editorial control, and he has said in the past, Jim Shooter did a great job of righting the ship at Marvel, but he kind of he kind of became a little bit too hands-on. So But Roger Stern said, don't blame Jim Salicrup because he said he's a great guy and all that. Don't hold it against him. He was just following what was going on from the higher ups, which would have been Jim Shooter. So, and Roger Stern knew that the sales of Captain America had been skyrocketing, since they took over the book, and he knew what the detriment is to the sales of the book by scheduling fill-in issues. Sometimes it's needed if deadlines can't be met, but they had not shown any signs of not meeting the deadlines. But Shooter I guess Jim Shooter had just wanted to take precaution, and I guess Roger Stern spent a little bit of time in the hospital because of his stomach issues, and then the whole thing of John Byrne getting married and having to go on a honeymoon and all that. But Roger Stern said John Byrne would make sure he made the deadline. He would spend whatever days up to the deadline, he would lock himself down, and he would not quit until the job was done. So it rubbed both guys the wrong way, and it's a shame because this is what got me back. This 9-issue run is what got me buying Captain America on a monthly basis. And Captain America fell. I mean, the quality after these guys left fell big time. But it kind of came back up a little bit when J.J. DeMatteis took over the writing and Mike Zeck. Now, I don't like Mike Zeck's art near as John Byrne, but it's not bad compared to some of the fill-in artists that Captain America book had. Now, Sal Buscema did a great job on a lot of the issues. Steve Englehart and Sal Buscema issues in the mid-'70s were fine on Captain America. But once again, some of the fill-in issues of Captain America and the Captain America just wasn't selling that well at all. It's kind of a shame, but you can get this whole 9-issue run. It's been reprinted in a hard copy collection called War and Remembrance. So it's looked back, and I think some of these books are some of the best that Marvel's ever produced. Some of these Captain America books. And there's another little mini storyline that I wish I could cover, and I might go back, a while down the road and cover. There's 2 more issues that I really like. It's kind of a toss-up between my 2 favorites, between these 2 with Bear and Blood and the 2 issues where Captain America fought Mr. Hyde and Batroc. It's kind of an offbeat little 2-issue tale, but it's really entertaining, and it's really it's got a lot of action, and but there wasn't a whole lot of action in these 2 issues. But I like the fact that he went back to England, and you got to kind of revisit his the remembrance of the dedication of the invaders and all that stuff. So, well, that's going to wrap up my reminiscing about Roger Stern and John Byrne, Joseph Rubinstein, 9-issue legendary run of Captain America in the late 1980s. So I think on next issue, I might be doing a little different. I'm eventually going to get to some Walt Simonson Thor. I mean, I can't skirt around those awesome issues much longer, but I think next issue I'm going to do a little bit differently, and I'm going to do a kind of a dedication to remembrance of a couple issues of one of my favorite supervillains. I'm going to dedicate and just kind of tell a couple stories from 3 issues of one of my favorite supervillains, Crusher Creel. So anyway, better known as the Absorbing Man. So anyway, thanks for checking me out here on. You can see this on YouTube, and thanks for hanging out and listening to me reminisce about these awesome Captain America comic books drawn by my all-time favorite artist, John Byrne. So, all right, that's going to wrap it up. So until next episode, I will talk to you later.